Hello, and welcome to Get Career Curious, the podcast that gives you the inside scoop on careers, what it takes to get there, and what the job is really like. In this episode, we're diving into a career path you might not even have considered, but totally should. Public relations, or PR, and analyst relations, or AR, and how those two career paths are similar, yet different. My guest today is Chris Hollis, Global Head of Analyst Relations at Qualtrics, whose journey is anything but traditional. He started off studying computer science and now spends his days driving impactful narratives, fostering key relationships with industry analysts. So welcome, Chris. Hi, Chris. Thanks so much for being on the podcast today.
Hey, Marita, it's great to be here. Yeah, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me.
So let's start with, what did you study in college? And why did you choose that major?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been almost 20 years now. I went into Mercer University in Macon, Georgia, go Bears, as dead set that I was going to be pre-med. And I did a semester, I did chem, I did biology, I did all that, and realized that's not. So I kind of pivoted along the way, was working on business administration, marketing, management, and I did that till I got to the end of my sophomore year and realized, I'd like it, but I don't know that this is exactly the right fit. And so at that point, you're 2 years in to college and you're like, I got to make a decision quickly. And so ultimately, I looked inside and I said, I'm going to fall back on something I've always enjoyed. I can do well, and I'm going to commit to doing this as fast as I can. And that was computer science. So I wound up doing a degree in information science and technology. I committed to spend the, summers university to try and get done within that 4-year window. I got out with a degree in information science and technology. I basically did it in 2 years. When you think about what is information science and technology, it's a good blend of coding. It's a good blend of understanding hardware and infrastructure of networks, how laptops, PCs, the world talks to each other. It's also a firm understanding of data. How do we leverage data and databases? Actually, that'll come back around in a weird way. But yeah, my intent was, let's just get done with this degree. Let's get out, and then we can start to make some decisions on where we go after that.
So computer science was a first kind of interest of yours. How was it a passion then?
Yeah, growing up, I can remember getting, you remember those desktops that used to sit there. And so my dad had one and we would play games on it and things like that. And then as I got older, we would start taking them apart and really understanding how the inner workings were. And I can remember in high school, I had 2 PC rigs sitting in my room and I was working on plugging in hard drives and different things like that. I've always had this passion around it, and it kind of came naturally. So when you're at that critical point where you're like, what is it that I think I want to do at college or university? I need to make a decision that's going to give me the best opportunity to complete what I'm doing and potentially set myself up for the future. That was something I fell back into. Now, fully transparently, I also, as I was going through that process, realized I don't know that I want to sit in front of a laptop every day and code. I don't know if that's it for me. But at that point, as a 20-year-old, you're kind of like, I just need to get out of here. I need to get going through this and get something done. And I knew I had the skills, and I actually had the interest too. And that's important. It's not just that you're good at it. It's like, can you find some passion in what you're doing at that point? And that was it for me.
So graduating, what was your first job like? Tell me a little about that.
I can remember graduating. I got my degree. I loaded up my car. I drove from Macon, Georgia, 6 hours south to where my mom's house was, just north of Tampa. I unloaded my car. I set it there, and I'm like, now what? Right? That's the question. And at that point, I kind of committed myself. I said, look, I'm going to take 2 months, and I'm just going to focus on rest, recover, right? This is a big process. Being in college, it's a lot. You're learning a lot. You're interfacing with new people and figure out your career. And I'm like, I just need to settle a bit. And so I was looking for jobs in Tampa, didn't really find anything. I got an invite from a friend to go to a party in Gainesville, Florida. I drove up there to kind of get away. I actually met a girl and wound up starting a relationship with her, and she was based in Orlando. And I was spending a lot of time in Orlando, and I hadn't had luck in Tampa in the job search. So I was searching in Orlando, and I hit a point where I was like, I got to do something. I almost took this door-to-door sales thing just to do something. And she had said to me, find something that you're actually interested in. And lo and behold, I got an offer from a very small PR firm, a 5-person firm, to come in and interview. And I'm like, I don't really know a lot about PR. I took some courses there, but at college
Yeah.
about that, but I'll go in and see. And so I went in, did the interview. They asked me to type up a press release. And I was like, I don't even know how to do that. And so I was Googling how to do it. I had an hour to write it, wrote a press release, went home, felt like there's no chance here. And got a call the next day and said, we'd love you to come work for us. And so, of course, at that point, you jump at it. It's a job and an awesome. I'm not doing door-to-door sales. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that's not me, right? And so what did it look like? It was a very small firm that focused on publicity for public speakers, right? So each public speakers, and that ranged from folks that were, therapists to folks that were experts in technology and thought leadership. And so I worked a lot on getting them noticed in industry verticals. But at the same time, I had to scratch that itch for the technology passion that I had. And so I started up a company blog, a company podcast. And now this is back like 2007. Like this is really at the nascency of that. And it was great. I really enjoyed it. And I got my feet wet, and still eternally grateful to Pam and Rick Lontos, who gave me the opportunity there, because without that, the rest of my career doesn't come into vision. So that was my first job. It was a lot of cold pitching. It was a lot of just getting on the phone and being aggressive and trying to find ways to get people noticed and doing the little things that are required to understand how this market works.
So just a step back, PR is public relations.
Yes.
And at the basic level, how does PR work for a company?
Sure. So let's say I am Chris Hollis company, right? I do a thing, and whatever that thing is, I need to be able to articulate to a number of different individuals, the public, investors, all of the folks that are paying attention, industry professionals, what my differentiation is. And so PR is the vehicle that you do that. PR can take a number of different shapes. It is work around what are those core messages that we want to land that show how we're different than the other person that does what Chris Hollis company does. And some vehicles that we do that through are talking to media, going out on media tours. And really what you got to do is you got to find media that cover that space that you're focused in. So if I'm a technology guy, I'm looking at tech, right? Who are those tech reporters that would be interested in this? And so PR is about not only just getting that message there, it's about cultivating the relationships. It's about understanding what is that reporter covering at this point and how do I fit into their story? It's not just me giving them a story. It's understanding what's important both for them, what's important in the market, the world in general, and how do I fit in, and finding a way to craft a narrative that does that. So there's a lot of engagement with folks, with a lot of discussion. I think the best thing that most people can relate to when you see how PR shows up is if you go read a story on NewYorkTimes.com, and there's a quote from a company executive about some research that had happened or something like that, I guarantee you PR had a hand, right?
Yeah.
They went out, they engaged with that reporter, they understand what it is. So that's what PR is. It's a megaphone for what your company does in that public forum.
Right. And I think it's an interesting and kind of fun career for someone who is outgoing and creative and likes to talk to people and maybe write as well. So are those some of the skills that you would see fitting well for that type of career?
Sure. And, I'll kind of abbreviate the rest of the journey and you can kind of see how that manifests. I left Florida. I got an offer from a PR firm in Seattle, Washington to help support Microsoft. And so I jumped at that, right? I get to do PR, but I also get to latch on to something that I know really well, which is technology. I moved from that, and then I started supporting a mobile phone company by the name of HTC. Folks might remember them. Ended up going from the agency side in-house at Nokia. Moved when my client from HTC moved back to Nokia. He brought me in. And so that's how I wound up there, right? And at the end of the day, like I covered a lot of different things because I went from Nokia, I ended up at Microsoft when Nokia was purchased by Microsoft. And so I covered things from mobile phone PR to tech security PR to working with the people that make the laptops that you and I are sitting on and doing PR for them. And the common thread there is that I didn't know everything about any of those topics. I knew enough, but I was also, to your point, I had that ability to be able to tell a story. And when you get that information, anybody can ingest information, right? You can ingest that information. And then if you're outgoing and you really like storytelling, you like those things, there's a way to kind of put that all together and really put your stamp on it. And so, yeah, I would say PR is great for someone like me, who technology driven, but really outgoing and didn't want to sit at that laptop and code all day.
Yeah.
I need a vehicle to go out and communicate and talk and engage with people. So yeah, I think that's a great example.
And I think your computer science background helps you understand whatever it is you're pitching, and you've had to learn a lot of different technologies throughout your career.
Yeah, I have. Like I said, I went from doing phone, like literally sitting down with the engineers that build the phone. We would start 18 months before a phone would even hit the market. And we would go, well, what are we trying to do with this thing? We would understand the vision. So that's marketing, right? There's marketing number one. The second is, what's the engineering reality around it? What's it going to do? How are we going to build it? What's our time frame? And understanding that. And so you take that piece of it. And then you understand what's in the market now and what are we going to be competing against. We try and navel gaze a little bit out to the future. And so, yeah, you're bringing together technology across kind of three different areas and multiple different areas, right? And my job is to help to take all of that together and create a cohesive narrative so that when we get to that moment where the phone comes out or we're releasing a new piece of software, it makes sense on why we did it, who it's for,
right,
what they're going to gain from using it. And so, yeah, there's a lot of different ways, but yes, being able to look at and say, hey, I have a technology interest and background, but I'm not beholden to what we would consider traditionally how you would do that.
Right.
There are other opportunities to leverage that. That was a big eye-opening moment for me in my career.
So what are you doing now in your career? You've transitioned again.
I have. And so one of the pieces when you do PR is you're dealing a lot with the public, with media. There's a whole other side of kind of engagement that happens from communications. Groups of individuals who cover specific industries who are experts, and they have the ability to talk both to the people who are building product and the people who are using that product that's being built. They're called the industry analysts. And so that field is called analyst relations. And so it's a lot like PR, but you focus exclusively on these folks who are also experts in the field and you connect the dots. And so that is what I do now. I lead analyst relations globally for a company called Qualtrics. And I spend a lot of time thinking about how we work with those analysts to take them on the journey with us as we're building. So stuff that, we talked about 18 months prior, we don't talk to the public about that. That's competitive advantage that we don't necessarily want to roll out there. But with the analysts, we can, because, they sign non-disclosure agreements and they agree to give us feedback and help us along on our journey. And it helps them understand the market that they're covering as well. And so I spend a lot of time engaging with those individuals on kind of where we're going from a way where we're building products to how we see the market changing for the demand and need for the products that we have. What are buyers thinking about now that maybe we're not, available to see, we're not in a position to see. And so it's PR and just a little bit of a different kind of frame in that it's more tied to business outcome and sales as opposed to raising awareness of a brand or a device or some sort of service. So it's really a nice blend for folks who are thinking like, hey, I like doing this, but I also have a real passion for the business side and understanding how it all works. Like, what does it mean for sales? How do the sales orgs work? How does marketing campaign work across the board? And so I do a lot of that. It's a lot of talking to people still, which is great.
Yeah, it's a lot of talking to people and asking for feedback and developing relationships. So that's a very strategic role. So if someone were in college, would you think starting for a job in PR might be a good place to start? Are there entry-level positions for that type of role?
Yeah, it's definitely, there are entry-level positions to do it. And the way I would recommend it is you could either start in PR or AR as well. And the place to start, and I can't recommend this enough, is if this is of interest to you, go out and research the firms that help support the companies that do this. And so on the PR side, I was very lucky to go in at a firm. At the time, it was called Wagner Edstrom, now called We, but there's a lot of great firms. From a PR side, if you want to go in there, all of these PR firms are great because what they do is they know what to expect from somebody who's just out of college, who has an interest. They know how to properly scale and give you the tools you need to be successful. You won't necessarily find that as much on the corporate side. And that's not because the corporations don't care. It's just that it's it's kind of a different need, right?
Yeah.
With the PR firms, they are well equipped to be able to get you that base level understanding of how it all works, give you the tools to be successful, and then help you kind of grow in your confidence. And without Wagner Edstrom and the team, I wouldn't be where I'm at right now. Like, I came in and I was as green as you could be. I didn't know what a work back plan was. I did like none of it. And they were very patient and very kind, and they brought me along. And at the
Right.
same time, it also doesn't overwhelm you with, I think, what can be really demanding on the corporate side, where you get in and you've got to go interface with a lot of different stakeholders all over the place and different,
Yeah.
verticals of the company. Here, it's like, look, we're going to get you grounded, and then we're going to help you kind of understand what it looks like to interface with those clients and understand how that piece of it. So I would highly recommend, for those who are interested in coming out, go reach out and talk to the firms. Their HR teams are great. They'll give you a ton of great insight, a ton of things to think about, and that's a great place to start.
Do they do recruiting at like colleges, or do you really have to research them and reach out yourself?
No, I think what happens is, if you happen to be, let's say, I'm in Seattle, right? And in Seattle, we know there are great communications programs at the University of Washington. There's even, I would say, and this might be sacrilegious to some of my friends, there's a really good one at Washington State University. And so there's always a natural kind of feel that they're going to go and look at those places, kind of communications programs and journalism programs. And you'll wind up finding that a lot of the firms are based in those tech hubs. So San Francisco, Seattle, even in New York, that tends to be where they live. However, there's a lot of ability to still take on remote at this point. If you find yourself, wherever it may be, and you're like, I don't know if there's a firm here or not, I would just recommend hit up Google and give me the top 10 PR firms in the United States right now and reach out. And you'd be surprised. They do actually go out and they do recruiting. They do go on the road for folks. I mean, they came and plucked me out of Orlando, Florida. Like, let's be honest, like, they got me. And so, I would just start there. Research, kind of get some of that information, and then talk to your program advisors as well. They will have a good insight. They have a lot of connections. They're able to kind of help point you in the right direction as well.
So what is the favorite part of your job? Like, what do you enjoy most?
There's a lot. There's a lot of, let's be clear, there's a lot of stress in this, and there's a lot of things or it feels like there's pressure and there's deadlines and all the things that you would come to expect with a role like this. But at the end of the day, understanding that this is a relationship business is still the biggest thing. And so my favorite part is any opportunity we get to do something in person with the analysts themselves, or when do we get to go and do a launch event for a phone and we're in person, because one, it brings you together with the audience that you're talking to. And there's nothing will replace in-person connection. The things that you can solve by sitting down with somebody and having a conversation, the knowledge you can share, it can't be replicated by doing it virtually. Some of that bonding that happens, you'll never be able to replace that. But at the same time, it also connects you to people you work with who you might not see on a day-to-day basis, or might be in a different office or a different location. And so any of these moments where we bring folks together to have real in-person conversations, whether it's in a one-on-one meeting with an analyst and executive, whether it's at a big dinner, any of those types of things, to me, that is where I always come out of those feeling reinvigorated. This is what it's all about. This is why I got into doing what I'm doing. And you always come away from it feeling really good.
So with that in mind, what is some of your least favorite parts of the job, or stuff that's kind of tough? I don't know if you have to travel. Some people love travel. Some people don't love travel.
Yeah, there's a few, right? From a travel perspective, I used to travel all the time. When I was with Microsoft, I helped support our silicon partners. And so those are the ones who build the components of your laptop, right? And I supported the teams that actually built the laptops, companies like Lenovo, HP, Dell. I would be on the road. I would leave on a Monday and fly to Asia, and then fly back to Seattle. And then I'd be home for a week, and I would fly to Finland and fly back. It was a lot, right? So the travel was one where that one was tough, but at the same time, I was at a point in my career where it was okay. I was willing to do that. And then I had kids and realized, like, I can't do that. And so I've been very fortunate. My employers kind of keep me in a position where I can be home a good amount. But I think what is tough is part of what you do when you're in PR or AR is, and as you kind of move up in your career, is you're going to have to be able to balance the needs of multiple parties. And what I mean by that is, we have an agenda from where I work that we
Mhm.
have a story that we want to tell, and we're trying to get somebody to write that story. But I also have to understand they're trying to write something that's important to their audience. And maybe those worlds collide sometimes. Or on the AR side, we put forward our product in an evaluation and it doesn't come back the way that we think is, indicative of what we put forward. And you kind of have to be able to negotiate and have some difficult conversations and do it in a way where doesn't feel combative, right? And so you really got to lean into that ability to be a good communicator and to understand people, those relationships I talked
Mhm.
about earlier. This is where it pays off. That
Yeah.
can be hard, right? Giving negative feedback to a reporter or an analyst or to your executives, not the easiest thing in the world to do, but really critical for getting the most accurate picture out there in whatever forum you're trying to go to. So that's always tough. I won't lie. We do a number of these evaluations where we kind of submit a product and we're rated against our peers. It's like taking a final exam on
Yeah.
steroids. It is 100+ questions, very technical. You're limited in how many words you can use to respond. You have to bring together 5 different product teams. They take about 140 hours to do. It is a lot.
Yeah.
So those ones are always a big lift, but the reward is worth it. I think at the end of the day, my bar is always, do I appreciate what I'm doing more than those bad times? Can I go through that hard
Yeah.
work that's necessary for success and come out on the other side and still find that I'm appreciating what I'm doing and feel good about it? And that's how I look at it.
And that's a good way to look at it because, no job's perfect. So I try to highlight, the highs and lows of different careers. And it's nice to hear that you were able to enjoy some international travel when you're earlier in your career. And then as life priorities change and you do have a family, it's great to hear that you're able to scale back because that's kind of when you want to.
I will say one
So,
other thing that was really hard, Marita, when you're first getting into PR too, when you, even at the firm or wherever you're at, and even when you're at the level that I've gotten to, you still have to pick up the phone sometimes and cold call reporters and try and pitch a story. And
yeah.
there's for me, that was always a really hard thing to do is I'll have a conversation with you if you want to sell you something like that. Just didn't come naturally to me. And, there's ways that you'll get over it. You kind of work through it and you get better at it. And when you start to understand that relationship level of it too, that's where it
Right.
becomes a whole lot easier. Where now I can pick up and call a lot of reporters. Hey, what's going on? You in town? Let's get a coffee. But early on, you got to just build that confidence. And sometimes there's going to be varying things. Maybe you're great at picking up and doing a cold call. That wasn't me. I struggled. And so I just worked through it and was surrounded by really supportive folks to do that.
Yeah.
So
A
I
cold call
was,
is essentially sales. So it's good to hear that those skills it's still the human relationship where you actually have to pick up the phone and call.
it is. And if you expand out on, if we just kind of expand on them
Yeah.
for a second, I think what I learned in order to be successful is because you hear cold calling, you're like, to call and just sell something to somebody.
Yeah.
Where the switch flipped for me was understanding that reporter that I'm talking to, they're still a human, right? And they are out there writing constantly about things. And so I started spending a lot of time just going in. If I knew I had to engage with, I would read their coverage and understand kind of where they were going and then pick up, or maybe it was started with an email before I pitched the story. And, hey, I noticed you're covering this space. What's on your list for things that you're really spending a lot of time on? It started as a conversation, right? It doesn't
Yeah.
need to be this thing where you're like, hey, I'm Chris Hollis and I have a story idea for you. It can just be a conversation like, hey, I'm interested. I read this story that you wrote.
Yeah.
Seemed really interesting. We've got some things we're doing over here. I'd love to just call and talk to you about kind of what we're doing and see if there's some alignment. And that to me was like, boom, broke through the wall. You understand at that point that it isn't necessarily need to be transactional. It
Yeah.
can feel an actual one-on-one relationship. And to your point, that's something that I think gets lost sometimes in this kind of digital age is I'm just going to text somebody and it's all this transactional back and forth. I promise you, they're human too. They want to know that people are paying attention to their opinion and they're more than happy to talk about it.
And I think this is a nice career option for someone who potentially wants to go into business and doesn't want to be behind a desk all day. A good part of your day is, but you do get the opportunity to leave the office and build relationships in person, and travel is often involved.
Yeah.
So,
Some of my favorite trips that I do are just going to our other offices that we have. And you hit on an incredibly important point too there, is that with PR, with AR, your job is to know the inner workings of the things that you're talking about, whether it's a product, whether it's whatever it may be. Your job is to know that. And so a lot of the work that I spend my time doing, talking internally to people to get an understanding of where we're truly at. So I make a lot of different relationships with different business groups there. If you're interested in business, PR is a great avenue to kind of go in and understand how the business works and start to garner that knowledge in a way that you might not normally have if you're like, I just want to do business development. Well, actually, like, go in and meet these people, and I have to understand kind of what their needs are. And I go and see them in other offices. And so I understand what they do. And like, when you think about my jump from PR to AR, I could not have done that without having those relationships with engineering teams, with marketing teams, with the business teams, with the executive teams, because that is all crucial to the career choice that I've made. And PR was the vehicle that opened that up for me to be able to go and do that. And so, it's a wonderful vehicle that offers you an opportunity to do all of that in-person interfacing and have great conversation, ask questions. To me, I was afraid to ask questions early on in my career. Always ask the question. People are more than happy to come along on that journey with you.
Yeah, totally agree on that. PR is something that you can move up the corporate ladder. And I assume when you first started, you were working in a small division, and now you're working with the C-suite on a daily basis, right? So talk a little bit about how that progresses throughout your career, because you're with the stakeholders now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the best way to think about it is that if you go into PR, AR, whatever, and you try and be a master of everything at once, you're probably destined to fail. And what I mean by that is the way that it's kind of set up is that there are specific pieces you're going to focus. And the thing I would recommend first and foremost is become an expert in that specific piece that you're working on. Go and talk to the teams that we know we've mentioned, marketing, engineering, product, whatever it may be, and just really dive in. I have a rule of thumb. When I start a new project, I spend at least 3 months just immersing myself in everything involved in it so that I know what's going on. And so once you do that, then you can start to represent that in a way that is really, successful. And so for me, early on, I did US PR specifically around Nokia's phones that they sold here in the United States. And that ended up morphing into an opportunity where I was able to really be articulate and do interviews with media outlets and things like that, where they took notice and said, look, if you want to keep moving up in your career, we want you to move to Finland and work at the global level and help teams in global regions understand how to talk about these products and understand how we're building them and the trajectory. And so, like, once you show your kind of unique capabilities on that thing that you start with, there's opportunity to take on more and more. And that's another beautiful thing too about PR and AR in and of itself, is that you're likely to be with a team where there's a lot going on and you're going to get pulled into different things that's maybe not in your day-to-day remit. Say yes to those. Say yes, because it's an opportunity to keep learning. It's an opportunity to see a different way of doing it. Take notes, like, understand that your way of doing PR can benefit from seeing somebody else's way, and they'll benefit from you too. And so it's very open. There's open borders, I would say, as you think about the way PR and AR work. There's opportunity to continue to learn. And it's a great vehicle for that. So for me, that's what it was. I take on that, and then I get an option to do the next thing and the next thing. And there were times, I'll be really clear, where I was like, I don't know if I feel technically qualified to do this. When I moved into security, like, that was one where we're talking about cybersecurity. I was a little like green in that area. I had some understanding, but again, I knew what my plan was. 3 months, go in, deep dive, learn, be the expert. And it turned out to be one of the best choices that I made, right? And opened up the door to other opportunities. So it's a great avenue. Just be great at the thing that you get, work as hard as you can to understand it, and then look for those areas to learn and look for those areas to contribute outside of it. You'll find it. The opportunities will come.
Super advice. So to wrap things up, what advice do you have to young adults right now? Maybe someone who's just looking into careers.
I would say, the biggest thing is realize there's going to be moments where you're going to feel like there's a tough decision in front of you, and you're going to feel like, how do I approach this? And the biggest thing I would say is, don't compromise the thing that you believe in, right? For me, it was not taking that sales job when I feel like I need to do this thing. It's understanding that, my passion means something too, and there will be a way to find a way to make that real. But I'm not going to give up on everything that I just spent my college career doing just so I can get a paycheck. And that's going to feel really hard at some points, right?
Yeah.
Like, I want to get out and I want to work. But at the same time, you're still you, and you still have value, and you've spent time building your skill set and the things that you believe in. So find the way to stick to those guns. There will be a little bit of compromise here and there, of course. So I'm not saying be rigid, but don't forget who you are and what you want to do. I would also say at every turn, ask questions. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to go and look at things in a different way. Like I said, I was somebody who did a computer science career and I might end up having to sit behind a laptop every day and code. But the reality is I started asking questions like, okay, kind of how else could this manifest itself? And because of those questions that I asked, because I asked my professors, I asked people that I knew who had graduated, I had a lot of conversations, and I realized there was a whole different way sometimes that you can manifest this outside of that traditional way that you think.
Yeah.
And so by asking questions, you open yourself up to different sets of insights and different perspectives. And that is the hallmark of great decision-making, is not making that in a vacuum, but getting that outside input to help inform in the best way understand what's out there. So stay true to yourself, stay true to what you believe in, chase the thing that you want to do, but at the same time, ask questions, be inquisitive, go and just try and soak up as much as you can before you make those decisions or as you're on your journey. And it will help you really kind of figure out where you want to land and get you to a position that would be great.
I agree. And I just think it's really interesting. People get so hung up on their major, and you can pick a degree, but that doesn't define you. And you can really use it in a lot of ways to explore all sorts of opportunities.
I would echo that so strongly, just because I've been in a position where I've hired people. And the thing I look at is, I'll be honest, like, a degree is important as a thing to have, right? And it gives me a little bit of understanding of where you're at, but I don't lead with a degree. I lead with who I am and what my skills are, right? And that is what hiring folks want to see at the end of the day. If there is a skill that maybe you don't have right now that might be important to your job, but you're passionate about it and you have other skills that are valuable for success, we can teach you the important components of wherever it is that you focus on. What I can't teach you as a graduate or as somebody who's interested in this field, I can't create interest. I can't create enthusiasm. That is what you have, and that's what you bring that's unique. And so lead with the skills, lead with the passions, lead with the things that are important. Show that you have an understanding, that you have the ability to understand and grasp the things that are important for that role. But at the end of the day, I'm hiring a person that fits not only the role that I'm hiring for, but I'm hiring somebody who fits the team that I'm hiring for, who's going to be somebody I enjoy working with on a daily basis, who I think is going to contribute in a way that's going to be successful for what we're trying to do. It's not just, yes, you have a degree from Michigan or from Harvard or from where it is. It is, now tell me about how you solve problems, or help me understand how you made a tough decision, or what you might do here. And the way that people think about that and believe in those things, way more important to me than any degree that I'd ever seen.
Great to hear. That's super. So thank you for being on today.
For those people that have interest in, you can hit me up. I'm on X at CHOLLIS. I'm more than happy to have conversations. And I think at the end of the day, PR is a great career and AR is a great career. And it's a career where if you put that time and effort into it, and this probably pertains to any career, the work that you put in is going to equate to what you get back from it, the opportunities that you have. So if you're somebody who, like me, effusive, likes talking, things like that, this is a great opportunity. But at the end of the day, just stick true to you and put the best foot forward, and you're going to do great.
Thank you so much. I loved having you on, and I really appreciate all the great wisdom you shared.
Thanks for the opportunity, Marita. It was great to be here.
Thank you for joining us today. Our goal is to help listeners discover careers that bring them joy and purpose. And it was evident from today's discussion with Chris Hollis that he truly enjoys his job. So some key takeaways from our talk with Chris include, first, trust your gut. You don't have to take the first job offered to you, even when you really need a job right out of college. Chris turned down his first sales job that didn't feel right and waited for a role that aligned with his future goals. Second, dig deep into whatever role you get before jumping in. Chris spends the first 3 months in any new role learning the product inside and out, setting the stage for a smart strategy. Third, Chris discussed how analyst relations plays a crucial role in the company's business strategy. He discussed how analyst relations is about influence, building credibility, and aligning with big picture goals. So if you have a friend who might benefit from today's discussion with Chris, please share this episode with them. Want even more career insights? Join our community at getcareercurious.com for exclusive content and behind-the-scenes access of this podcast that you won't find anywhere else. Thank you again for joining me, your host, Marita McCahill, in this episode of Get Career Curious. Until next time, stay curious.